We have a perfect fit. If we were working with a dado that required shims, this process would be much more time consuming. We'd have to completely remove blades each time and add or remove shims. The dial width dado set eliminates frustration and makes it very quick and easy to make dados. Let's move on to joinery using the dado set. We're going to use a dado sled to create different types of joinery using the dial width stacked dado set. If you do not have a dado sled, you can download the plans to make one from this CD. We're going to begin by making half lap joints by cutting out 2 mating slots that will set flush to form a half lap joint. I've unplugged the saw and set the sled in the grooves on the table. I'll clamp a piece of 3/4 inch wood to the sled to help stabilize while cutting and also prevent blowout on the back side of the cut. I'll start by measuring the boards. In this case, our material is 2 inches wide and 3/4 of an inch thick. So I'll need a dado that is 1 inch deep by 3/4 of an inch. Mark the locations of the dado on the edges of the board. I've marked my workpiece ahead of time. My dado cutters are set for a 3/4 inch dado, but if your material is not this thickness, you will need to follow the previous instructions for setting the correct width. Set the cutter height so that the tips are about 1/4 of an inch above the sled, and then plug the saw in and make a test cut. My width is correct, so I can make the first pass in my workpieces. Next, raise the dado set up another 1/4 of an inch and make another pass. After this, 2 more 1/4 inch passes are needed to reach the depth line I've marked on the board. Wait until the blade stops before you unclamp and remove the material. Our half lap joints are a perfect fit. Keep the sled on the table and we'll create dental molding next. I've unplugged the saw and added an auxiliary fence to my sled to give me some adjustability. I've also made several holes in the fence, which I will put a dowel in to create an easy indexing fence to give us equal spaces between my dado cuts to create the beautiful look of dental molding. If you don't have an indexing fence, you can download simple instructions from this CD. You could opt to use a miter gauge and an indexing pin. They both accomplish the same task. I'm going to take our finished sample and show you how to evenly space your dados. First, put it flat against the sled, slide it into the dowel, and push it past the cutter. Pick it up, index to the dowel, push it past the cutter. Pick it up, index against the dowel, and push it past the cutter. I'll do this until I've finished my piece of wood. Now I'm ready to reconnect the power, put on my hearing protection and safety glasses. Watch as I make the first few cuts before trying it yourself. As you can see, I've made a series of evenly spaced 3/4 inch dado cuts across the piece to create dental molding for a nice decorative effect on the top edge of the curio cabinet that I'm building. Rabbet joints are frequently used to assemble corners and drawers, bookcases, cabinets, and similar jobs. The joint is formed by cutting a recess or a rabbet at the end of each piece to accommodate the second piece to be joined. For the curio cabinet project I'm working on, I'll cut rabbets around all four sides of my workpiece for the back so that you don't see the joint. I've installed an auxiliary fence to keep from cutting into my existing table saw fence. I've attached feather boards to the auxiliary fence to keep even pressure on my workpiece when I push it across the dado cutter. Draw an outline on the piece to be cut, disconnect the power to the saw, and set the dado blade at the depth required. Half the thickness of wood is standard. Reconnect the power and run the wood through the saw. Begin by rabbeting the end grain, turn the material clockwise, rabbet the long grain, turn it again and run the end grain, and then finally the long grain. This method ensures a smooth cut with virtually no tear out. I'm going to put my safety glasses on, eye protection. We've got a flawless rabbet to end on. This concludes the segment on dados, tips, and tricks. I hope that you were able to learn some valuable tips and techniques to use with your new Freud dado set, and we'll see you next time.